Well, one top priority for the new Obama administration, officials revealed today, is the plan to order the closure of the detention camp at Guantánamo Bay on his first full day in office. But the president-elect's already admitted it will prove a challenge, and experts have warned it could take as long as a year. Many of the remaining prisoners simply cannot be sent home because of human rights concerns about their destinations. And then there's the question of how to try detainees accused of the most serious crimes, who the US admit have been maltreated. John Sparks has been investigating what it'll take to shut Guantánamo down.
An atrocity or a necessity, Guantánamo Bay's camps and courts were meant to protect the American people.
The ones in Guantánamo Bay are killers.
Yet they've served to divide and infuriate.
Guantánamo is a blot on America's reputation around the world.
President-elect Obama says he'll shut it all down.
I intend to close Guantánamo.
But that's easier said than done. What's he going to do with the detainees?
I'd keep it open. I mean, where are they going to keep these people?
Every detainee has been issued a sketch pad, an artist pad, that enables him to, mental stimulation within the cell.
Unarmed and well presented, this a Pentagon offensive of the non-military variety.
Chief, what cartoons do they prefer?
We can't speak to the inmates, and every shot is vetted by a team of censors. But the Guantánamo experience is justified and humanized for the attendant press.
Ice Age is real popular right now. Ice Age 1 and 2. Yes, they really like Ice Age 1 and 2.
It could be the last tour you ever see. President-elect Obama has condemned the camps at Guantánamo, and signing its death warrant, we now know, will be one of his first acts as president. The first 20 detainees, captured on the battlefields of Afghanistan, were flown to Guantánamo in mid-January 2002. Yet the camp's population would swell to nearly 800.
The fact remains that treatment is proper, and there's no doubt in my mind that it is humane and appropriate and consistent with the Geneva Convention for the most part.
This is Camp X-Ray, the first detention facility built at Guantánamo. It was rudimentary, like the conduct of some of those who worked on the base.
5 men with a shield would go into the cell, and they would, kicking and screaming, and the detainee would be hogtied and pulled out of the cell. At one time, I witnessed a detainee being kicked in the face after having been hogtied and sprayed, and that was out in the causeway in the middle of all of our leadership and everything.
Donald Rumsfeld authorized the use of 15 specific interrogation techniques at Guantánamo Bay, but he wasn't entirely happy. "I can stand for 8 to 10 hours, he wrote. Why is standing limited to 4? Detainee Omar Kader, who arrived in Guantánamo as a 16-year-old, claims interrogators used him as a human mop, wiping his own urine from the floor.
Testimony from these people, including myself, has come out, like, for example, having them doused in cold water in a tiny little isolated room and having the air condition turned on full and left there for hours on end to shiver, like being short shackled, which means having your arms and your legs shackled to a loop onto the ground and being left there subjected to loud music and white noise.
Rumsfeld would rescind his interrogations order, but it wasn't communicated through the chain of command. These techniques would spread from Guantánamo Bay to Abu Ghraib in Iraq. Along with the camps, President Bush set up a parallel judicial process, a new type of court or commission to hold terrorists to account.
We were invited to Guantánamo Bay for a reason. The Pentagon was making a sales pitch, a last-minute, last-ditch attempt to sell the military commission. It's the only practical way, some people say here, privately, of bringing terrorists to justice.
That's because this special commission can do things that normal American courts can't. For example, prosecutors can use evidence that's been obtained through enhanced interrogation techniques.
It looks like a court. Sometimes it feels like a court. Sometimes people act like it's a court. It's anything but a true court of justice. Any court of justice that allows torture, coercion, has denied access to counsel to detainees for years, is a true sham and a true farce.
The CIA has already admitted to waterboarding Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, the so-called mastermind of the 9/11 attacks. But the chief prosecutor at Guantánamo told me he wouldn't use any evidence produced by this method of interrogation, which simulates the effects of drowning.
How important to your case is information, intelligence that has been gathered through waterboarding, through torture?
Not at all. We can't use evidence as a result of torture. Wouldn't anyway.
What about waterboarding?
But waterboarding, we don't plan to. I think
you don't plan to use information from.
No, I think it has become a way for some of our critics, and we welcome the perspective of our critics, but for some of them to use as kind of a shorthand to discredit the process.
The critics included the next president, and his position seemed perfectly clear.
They're ashamed of Guantanamo. I intend to close Guantanamo, and I will follow through on that.
It is more difficult than I think a lot of people realize.
We've learnt that all pre-trial cases in front of the commission have been scrapped. It's back to square one, we were told. It gives Obama's team time to move the 250 detainees off the base, but few on the US mainland want them detained there.
I wouldn't want them on the mainland. They're over here, if they escape, where they going? They ain't going nowhere.
EU countries, including the UK, are prepared to accept a number of detainees already cleared for release. They'll meet in Brussels in 2 weeks' time. On the agenda, we understand, a so-called joint action, last used in 2002 to end the siege of the Church of the Holy Nativity in Bethlehem. 12 participants were granted refugee status and moved to Spain, Italy and France.
There are a couple of European governments who said that they may be willing to be part of this plan, Portugal and Germany in particular. Some other governments, including the UK, have put out little feelers that they may be willing to accept some detainees if it's part of this plan.
The so-called high-value detainees, men like Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, will be tried, but the thought of using ordinary US federal courts makes some experts very nervous indeed.
The US criminal justice system provides for so much disclosure of information as a matter of constitutional right that whenever over the last decade we have had open trials, the result has been to disclose much information to Al-Qaeda and other terrorist groups that allows them to more effectively fight against the government in the future.
Using closed US military courts would preserve a measure of secrecy, but the presiding judge could release the accused on the basis that he's been tortured. For many, including Obama, this is the nightmare scenario.
Got a bunch of folks who've been detained, many of whom may be very dangerous, who have not been put on trial or have not gone through some adjudication. And some of the evidence against them may be tainted, even though it's true.
We've learnt that officials at Guantanamo have tried to make detainees promise not to sue the US government on their release, but it won't work. Just before Christmas, 4 former inmates, including those known as the Tipton Three, won the right to sue President Bush and Donald Rumsfeld on torture charges. Guantanamo will close, but its history will be played out in courtrooms for years to come.
John Sparks reports.